Heavenly Father, we come to you tonight to just thank you for all the things that you provide for us. Take a few moments to keep the families in prayer for, I know we've had several catastrophes in the world over the last few days, so just put your arms around those folks and let the healing begin. Uh, Please let us make the right decisions for the town tonight as we move forward with this meeting. In your Son's holy name, pray this. Amen.
Amen. I pledge of allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, I'll call this meeting to order. Wyatt likes to use this thing. I don't think I will. Small enough group. We have public comments up first, and we have James Helms. Please come up and to the podium and say your name and address. And
My name's James Helms. I live at 3716 Birchdale Court, and I've been living there like 47 years. And we have a problem in our neighborhood. There's a guy got a business across the street from me, and it's like 24/7. He does detailing work, body work, paint work, but it's like 7 days a week. And I know you're not supposed to have a business in a residential section. I went through the proper channels. I went through code enforcement, and I appreciate y'all listening about that. I need to get something done because it's traffic in and out all night long, every day. And right below there, there's a drug house on Pine Cliff Court. Both of them's on Pine Cliff and Birchdale. And it's the same way. It's been busted before, but there's more traffic. In fact, one neighbor said they've got a camper out back, maybe two, that people live in. And but there's people walks through your yard, down the street. I mean, this goes on like say 24/7. It's not just once in a while. And it's even when I left a while ago, there was like probably 4 or 5 cars there. And I know the police can only do so much. But like I say, it's hard for me to have my family over to sit outside during the day or on the weekend or something like this, because there's stuff going on all the time. And like I say, there needs to be something done about both of these things. I know the guy that's doing the work over there. That shouldn't be happening, because first time when I built a garage, Stallings told me that there cannot be any business run from your home there. But like I say, and there's people driving in and out of there all night long. The lights shine in your house, and it's just hard to walk outside if there's not a group of people standing out there. He's got a ton of cars around there. Code enforcement people have seen it, and he's got a fence up, got old cars behind it. In fact, I got a violation. I restore cars myself, and I had a vehicle in front of my shop, and somebody complained about that. It's just been several weeks ago, maybe a month ago. And I had 30 days to solve the problem. And I mean, just like that, I mean, which I did, but still, this shouldn't be happening in the neighborhood. We have children walking up and down the street. People walk their dogs. I mean, and I know there's already been a shooting over there. I drive by, somebody shot at that house, the drug house. But I appreciate you listening to me, and maybe we can get something done about this, because it's just not safe.
thank you for coming to speak to us. Before you go, where's Birchdale?
It's in Callanwood.
It's right off.
Callanwood?
Yeah, it's the backside of, Spring Hill.
Yeah.
It's a
Privet
dead
Road.
end cul-de-sac. Like I say, I've been living there 47 years, and I don't want to have to move, but,
Right.
you know, like I say, it's not good. Because most of the people been living in there have lived there for years. And, some of them are kind of hesitant about saying anything because, you know, maybe they might, they scared maybe something might happen with people, but there's, the people that's coming in there is, it's right off of Privet Road, turn on Wood Glen, and then back on Birchdale.
Not too far from the new park.
No, sir. It's right around the corner there.
Thank you. Well, we've got our attention between us and police chief, town manager, and the zoning department.
We appreciate it.
Thank
Thank
you.
That's it for the public comments or those who signed up. Next up, consent agenda.
Hey, I'd like to pull one of the items out for discussion, and that would be the grant policy amendment.
Okay,
And, but other than that, I'm okay with the rest.
all right.
I move to approve the consent agenda with item C, grant proposal amendment being removed.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 That's unanimous. Rather than let me take a chance on skipping that, I'm going to go ahead and move the grant policy amendment to item 6B.
Okay.
All right, next up, report from the mayor. Mayor Pro Tem, nothing from me tonight. Any from the council members?
No.
Only thing I would say is just, we kind of covered them both, but at the WUMA meeting, just a reminder that kind of the hot topic is the sewer for the county, and that's going to probably continue on. But, and also some of these bills that we are opposing tonight. But those are kind of the hot topics for the rest of the municipalities.
Okay, oh, I should have, well, we all had a chance to read the resolution. Should we read that in, or just, it's good as is?
You can if you'd like, but it's not necessary to read it in.
In the essence of time, we'll leave it out. I mean, not read it in, but incorporate it into the written minutes. Town manager and town departments.
Sure. I've got a brief report, and then Miss Donnelly now, newly Miss Donnelly, has a report. So I'll let Eunice kind of share the update, but she has a new last name officially. So
You say that with an accent, though. You really have to say that with an Irish accent, right?
an Irish accent.
Donnelly.
Yeah, if I tried to do the Irish accent, it would come out sounding weird. So
Like
I'll defer
mine
to others.
didn't.
So obviously as we go through the budget process, we're at the point of that process where we're going to be giving you a draft budget later this week. That's not the recommended budget. The purpose of it is just to have a starting point for discussions. And part of my goal is to try to kind of fulfill our priorities as much as we can, meet our goals as much as we can while staying within budget. On the general fund side of things, our revenue projections aren't keeping pace with inflation. That are about at just under 4%, I believe. And certainly the future sewer capacity issues, we don't know how exactly that'll affect our future revenues. But certainly if sewer capacity dries up, that could potentially affect them. Also, at the same time, on the expenditure side of things, the cost of everything, and I don't say that loosely, everything is going up. We all see it in our personal lives where it's the cost of eggs, professionally here at the town, we're seeing it. Trash costs are going up. The cost of paper, the cost of audit fees, just really everything in between is going up. So that's the first factor driving expenditures. The second is labor costs. Again, we're seeing that across economic and nationwide and global spectrums. The cost of labor is increasing. And then thirdly, certain services have been expanding. Things that are all noble, kind of really bread and butter things that when a lot of people think about local government, making sure that the roads are adequately maintained, making sure we're funding our police, making sure we've got a full-time SRO officer, enhancing various parks and greenways. So really, not only the operational and maintaining what we've got, but really enhancing as well. So we've gone through 3 rounds of cuts, some departments more than that. We'll continue to kind of work towards that. And there are some challenges, but I look at it optimistically. And we're going to be okay. We're going to kind of get through it and figure out a way to make this happen. So, yeah, sure, go ahead.
In one sentence, just, you said it's a draft budget, but it's not the proposed budget. Can you, one sentence, what the difference there is? What you
Yeah,
mean by
good
that?
question. So the manager's recommended budget is what I think we should do, you know? To get there, I want to get a little bit more feedback because it might be a situation of we've got competing priorities. What is more important, right? Because we're not going to be able to fund everything. We're not going to be able to fund all the priorities and operationally everything most likely. Maybe we get by for a year or two, but in the long term, right? So I need to get a little bit more feedback from the board about what is a greater priority from y'all, and want to kind of talk through it and walk through it. So once we do that, I'll come back to the board with the formal, and it is a formal process, the legally proposed budget. It'll be presented to y'all formally. There'll be a public hearing. We'll put a newspaper ad in the paper. So that's the difference between the draft budget and the formally recommended budget. All right, Miss Donley.
I'll keep this short. So I got married, changed my name now. Got married a year ago. I did my taxes first, so woohoo! I didn't want to have to go through all that. So I patiently waited, changed it, so you'll see my last name changing.
What was it?
It was McSwain. Yeah. I loved McSwain, so that was hard. That was a hard one to let go. But I'm moving to the front of the classroom, so that's exciting. My kids, woohoo, they don't have to wait. But anyways, we're, full on in spring break mode at the parks department. We're doing different things every day in multiple parks. So Monday was at Privet. Today, we actually did stuff out at Blair Mill for kids of various ages. Tomorrow, we're doing a family trivia night in Stallings Municipal Park from 6 to 8. And then Thursday, we have our shred day, and then also design a planner in Stallings Municipal Park. Friday, we have some pop-up programs. Hopefully it doesn't rain. But the biggest thing I'd have to say is I applied for NCDOT's bike initiative grant a few months ago. And thanks to Chief, he kind of wrote a letter of support for us. You could be granted anywhere between 25 and 100 bike helmets of various sizes. And we actually were given all 100. So those will be distributed out at Privet Park first, since that park is only accessible via bike. I thought this would be a great way to partner with the police department for us to go over bike safety, the importance of listening to road signs, and just for kids to be safe on a bike and giving them the opportunity to have a helmet and not just one, maybe 2 or 3 for them to grow into. So just wanted to let you guys know where we're at, and thanks to Chief for helping us with that as well. So thank you guys.
Any other department?
Sure. I don't want to compete with Eunice, but I just wanted to let you guys know that we also received the CRTPO transportation grant for updating the Silver Line plan with the small area plan, the comprehensive land use plan, and the TOD overlay. So
We're okay if y'all compete.
You can win.
Yeah.
I just forgot to put it with the
Did you get more than 100 helmets?
no, but we can potentially, who knows, get some.
What about the Carpo grant? How much was it?
Oh, I see. So we got the grant for $125,000,
Wow.
and we have to do a 20% match. the next budget.
Well, that pretty much beats the 100 helmets, although we appreciate the 100 helmets.
They're gold crusted helmets.
It's not a competition.
He said he didn't want to compete, sorry. I competed. Nice job, both of you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hey, Chief, I was thinking about you. Charlotte must have been training their police biking officers today, because there was like 20 of them doing kind of the rounds. So just thinking about you today.
Any other department heads? All right. Next up, agenda approval.
Move approval of the agenda as, with one exception, moving grant policy amendment item 6A.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Text amendment 23.02.01. Patrick, you want to, let me open the public hearing and then you can speak to us on, about this. Thank you.
Sure.
Alrighty.
Patrick, proceed.
Okay.
Or him, please.
All right, so good evening, council. Tonight I'm bringing to you all text amendment 230201, accessory structure size limitations. All right. Oh, too fast, sorry. So the request is to amend Article 2.10-2, accessory structures located in setback to implement limitations in the size and quantity of accessory structures located here in the town of Stallings. To give you all a little bit of a background on this, the town has received a few permit requests over the past several months for accessory structures that oftentimes have not been in harmony with the areas in which they're being built. Oftentimes they are too large, and with these larger accessory structures being built, this has caused an increase in impervious surface area in the town, and this could potentially lead to stormwater issues down the road. And my last bullet point here on the slide, I just wanted to make this clear that I'm discussing with you all today accessory structures, which are things like detached garages or sheds, not accessory dwelling units, which are areas where people could live and reside. So two separate things. Accessory dwelling units have their own section in the development ordinance.
Could you define that better or differently? I
Sure.
think
So
I-
accessory dwelling units are like secondary habitable structures. Habitable,
Oh,
yes. So, and accessory structures are things like detached garages or sheds, which are not meant for people to be able to live in. Like, you wouldn't expect somebody to be living out of a garage, per se, that doesn't have heat or things like that.
what if it was? What if it was a first floor garage, second floor, or even back half of it was an apartment?
Well, then that would be considered to be an accessory dwelling unit, which would have different characteristics that would go along with that. Is defined differently in a different part of the development ordinance.
This covers both permanent and what I would call a lot of the sheds here are prefab and they're just dropped off. They're not built on site. It
Right.
covers both, right?
Yes, it would. And any accessory structures that are, will have been built to this point, if this were to be adopted, will be grandfathered in, just to let you all know. So the first part here, the first slide of the text amendment reads 2.10-2, accessory structures located in setback. Now, the first part of this, part A, the actual language in here is not changing as to what is currently in the development ordinance. So we just had to we added in this part B here, which is new language, but we just reformatted part A, so we had to include it. So essentially, part A is just describing the different setback requirements for accessory structures, saying how they cannot be within 5 feet of property lines or within 4 feet of easements or right-of-ways. So that's not changing, but that's just a little bit of an explanation as to what is already, this has been adopted with the development ordinance since it was new back in 2018. But B, the new language that we're bringing in today states there must be a primary structure prior to any accessory structures allowed on the property. And the next slide has the chart on accessory structures, sizes and quantities allowed. Fences, pools, and pergolas are not included as accessory structures. So here's that chart, the same thing that I just passed out to you all just a few minutes ago. Is titled Accessory Structures, Maximum Size, Number of Structures Allowed. The left column, you have the lot size. In the middle, you have the maximum footprint. And all the way on the right, you have the maximum number of structures allowed. Now, I'm going to run through a few different examples with you all in just a couple of minutes, but I did want to let you all know this was taken pretty much directly from the town of Indian Trail. And they have something very similar to this, and staff just worked on these numbers to make them better fit the feel of Stallings and be in harmony with the town of Stallings. But this is something that is relatively common in different municipalities. As I said, Indian Trail has one of these, and I also do know that Lancaster County, South Carolina, has rules and regulations that are similar to this. And in my few examples here, I do have a few different houses that are in there, and those were just chosen completely at random just for the sake of having examples for you all. So I just wanted to put a disclaimer in there just to make that clear. Our first example here is a house in the Brookfield neighborhood. Its lot size is 0.453 acres, and its home ground floor footage is 1,540 square feet. And following along with the chart I provided with you all, home of this size, on this lot size and of the size would be, it would follow 25% of the accessory of the ground floor area of the principal structure, which means that until they could have one accessory structure, that would be 385 square feet. Moving on to our second example here, again, chosen completely at random. The lot size for this house in the Vickery neighborhood is 0.567 acres, and the home ground floor square footage is 2,483 square feet. So this would fall into that second row in that table that I presented, I just gave to you all a minute ago, and that would mean that they could have 50% of the ground floor area of the principal structure for their accessory structure quantity sizes on the lot. So in total, they could have two accessory structures that total, in this case, 1,241.50 square feet, which is half of the principal structures. But again, if you're in a neighborhood that has a HOA, then that any HOA rules or regulations similar to this that are stricter would supersede over what I'm presenting to you all today. The staff does recommend approval of text amendment 230201. This text amendment allows accessory structures to be more in harmony with the zoning districts and areas of town that they're built in. This allows the town of Stallings to be better able to restrict the quantity of impervious surface within its limits. This text amendment can aid in reducing the number of stormwater runoff issues by managing impervious surface quantities. And Planning Board also did recommend approval. Now, Planning Board had a few concerns about this. They thought that maybe the size quantities were a little on the larger side of things, but again, currently there are no regulations in place for accessory structures. So currently people can go out there and build as many accessory structures as they like and build as large accessory structures as they like. So this is just a starting point and being able to regulate that. So do you have any kind of questions for me before you all make a vote? Yeah.
Existing accessory units, how are they treated?
So they would be grandfathered in. Anything today and prior would be grandfathered in. Yeah.
There were some data points that we talked about today.
Mm-hmm.
Have we been able to obtain those data points?
So yeah, the data points, I did some research the past 6 months.
Okay.
And over that time period of the type of accessory structures that we're talking about today, things like detached garages or sheds, there were a total of 7 of those in town, and they were in 3 different zoning districts. So there was 1 in our industrial zoning district, there were 3 in SFR 2, and there were 3 in SFR 3. So again, so that'd be like 2 kind of more residential zoning districts and 1 obviously industrial, but the actual types of those in industrial was kind of like a smaller barn, kind of a larger structure, probably meant for storage. I'm not quite sure though. SFR 2, there were 2 detached garages and 1 shed, and in SFR 3, there were 3 detached garages.
And how many, so that was the total request, 7. How many of those would have been out of compliance? Would all 7 of them been out of compliance if this had been in play?
So I did not check to see that. I can get back to you on that, but there was at least 7 total that would have been potentially impacted diet, but just trying to think here. So those 7, this would have applied to those 7, but I'd have to do further research if I can get back to you in an email if you would want to know if those were out of compliance.
Patrick, is that the total number that we received for all accessory permits, or is that the number that where the accessory permits were larger than the principal structure?
So that was the total number of accessory permits for things that apply in this text amendment, things like garages or detached garages or sheds. So there are other types of accessory structures that we kind of count when we're doing permitting, like fences, pools, and pergolas, but that's stated earlier here in the presentation that doesn't count towards what we're doing.
Of those
today.
7, how many were of the accessory structures are larger than the principal structure?
So none of those were large. Well, I didn't view that data point. I was just trying to locate the how many total that there were accessory structure permits that applied in this case, but I'd have to do further research to double check.
What was the time frame of that 7 came in? I'm sorry.
That was 6 months.
6 months, sorry.
Yes.
Why do we have different measuring? And maybe I missed that, sorry.
No, yeah, you're
But
fine.
why do we for 0 to 1 acre, we go by ground floor area and then later on we go by lot and then the entire residential unit, I guess.
So for larger ones, let me go back here and see if I can. So it's just that as the lot size gets greater, staff, we thought it just made more sense to kind of measure by the, let's see here. Just trying to make sure I'm telling you a coherent answer. So what was your question again? Sure.
So, when lot sizes gets larger, the house sizes sometimes don't get larger. That's kind of why they're changed, because, some houses built, let's say you have 5 acres, but you only have a 2,000 square foot house, that would affect the size greatly of what accessory structure size you would be able to build. But with having that larger lot size, even if you have a smaller house, it allows you to build more accessory structures.
Okay.
It sounds like we're only talking about residential.
Well, now this applies to all lots here in town. I just picked some residential examples because they were simpler.
Max's answer just sounded like it's residential. So what if
No,
the
this applies.
principal building on a commercial lot was, well, it's obviously not a house. Okay.
Right, so there's principal structures and the accessory structures. So on any lot that you'd have a principal structure, and then any ones that come after that would be accessory.
Do we define what a principal structure is?
So a principal structure on a lot would be something that, for a business, that the primary point of business would be conducted, and for residential, that'd be like the principal house per se, but then
First house? What if the guy's got enough acres that he has an old farmhouse that they grew up in, and the other part of their 5 acres or whatever, they're gonna build a nice 4,000 square foot house. Which one's the principal then?
Right, well, that would all depend if those are on the same parcels or not, because you can't have two principal structures on the same parcel. So they could own land, but you can only have one principal structure on a parcel.
But could you swap and say, well, that's not the principal structure anymore, this is the principal structure?
Sounds like you can't have two on the same.
No, currently, our ordinance reads you can have one principal use per parcel. That's how the 2018 ordinance reads. So if there was, let's say there was two houses on a parcel, which I don't know if there's any in town, I haven't researched that, that would have been a grandfathered use.
Say that again, the last piece?
If there's two principal structures on a lot, currently, that means it was grandfathered in. We don't allow multiple principal structures on a property with its current ordinance.
I think maybe the definition of principal structure, I mean,
Primary principal, so just imagine, I'm using residential as an example. The house you live in, the first structure, that would probably be the primary structure. Anything incidental to that would be an accessory structure.
So would a way to get around that be to parcel off your 10-acre lot? And
Correct.
you want your mother-in-law to have a place, you'd have to do it that way. How does this affect the ag uses in our town? There's only a couple, but
Agriculture has different regulations based on the state. So they're usually exempt from our ordinance.
how does this affect the golf courses? We've got two thriving golf courses.
So it would affect the golf courses. So we would have to figure out what the primary structures on the golf courses are. And if they were to build accessory structures, that's how we would determine. I would assume that it would be over 5 acres. This last section would apply, where they could build 100. I can't see it. I don't know the language at the top of my head, but the 5% square footage of the lot, and then a single structure couldn't be more than 125% of the primary structure. So I'm assuming I'm thinking about the Shanamar, the Divide Golf Course. That front building would probably be considered the primary structure, and any accessory structure to that couldn't be 125% of that building. But they could have up to 5 accessory structures.
The maintenance shed though might,
And bathrooms, that may happen in the future, that would be separate too. What about Emerald Lake, for example?
Emerald Lake would, the golf course,
Yeah.
I don't know what the structures are like on that golf course, but
oh yeah,
it would be
shoot, they
similar.
separate them.
It would also affect.
They have you have the restaurant and then you separate where you check in.
Which was there first?
So we would have to
Or the
consult.
restaurant? Before the event center was in, well, first of all, they had a big fire. Then they brought in a double wide for a pro shop for a bunch of years. Then they finally built the front building on the driving range, the small, where they run all the business out of. Then after that came the massive event center, which would not work. They would not have been allowed to do that under this. Which,
But this would only be going forward, right? It's not
Yeah, it's not retroactive.
so
Yeah.
the golf courses would already be grandfathered in.
Yes, that is correct.
Going to be able to add additional, that's the thing. So
the other thing, one more thing with the Emerald Lake is they're also looking at building a cart garage, cart barn. That'll be fairly large to house that. And I'm sorry, I said one more thing, but this ties right into that, but a question I have written here. Impervious surfaces are rooftops
Yes,
and parking lots.
that is correct.
So this doesn't cover parking lots, additional paved areas whatsoever. If somebody wants to put in a massive driveway on their small lot, or Emerald Lake in particular, I know is also looking to build not only that cart barn, but a whole lot more parking for their event center. How does this affect that?
So things like parking lots and driveways, that would be a different type of permits. They'd have to go through our engineering department and also have grading. So it will not affect this directly because that is a separate process compared to, the building itself is a separate process as compared to driveways or things of that nature.
Brad, your turn.
Yeah, well, I don't know, I have a question, actually. It's more of a comment, and don't think I'm just trying to move the agenda quicker, because it feels like this isn't ready for adoption because there are questions. I have questions. I don't know if this is complaint-driven, or are we just being really proactive? I heard it's about site nuisances, I'm thinking, as well as stormwater. And then I'm having a hard time, Patrick, just trying to figure out how this applies in our town, because it is relatively new. I think we saw it Thursday for the first time, at least I did. I'm not sure it came out earlier. I'm not ready to vote for it, but I'm not ready to say I think it's totally a bad idea.
Okay.
I would like to learn more about it.
And I'm not ready to put our golf courses again in Hazard's Way
Well,
of a
and that
bad-
would be an example
bad
where you
zoning.
probably carve out a use like a golf course. That doesn't.
Not
feel
that I
like
want
it
to separate them,
makes
but those are the ones
Yeah.
that definitely would be impacted by this. In light of the time constraint, shall we?
Yeah, I'm not, I've already told people in transparency, I'm not really in support of it. And the fact that we don't have that number on the number of impacts, I don't even feel like I have data to counteract my gut feeling here. And if it's as one or two, and then we're putting a restriction on the whole town for one or two instances, I kind of get a little antsy about putting a restriction on the whole town for a couple of bad actors. So I'm the same way. I'm leaning heavily to a no. I'll just say that, but I'm okay taking and waiting until we get some more information.
I make a motion to defer this to the next meeting and work with staff on some data points that we need to help figure out the solution. Unless, I'm not ready to vote no. I think it could have some merit. I just don't know if these are the right parameters.
I'm with that. Let's defer.
All right, I'll second.
Maybe options.
Oh, okay, I didn't know if you seconded.
Second.
Okay,
And I think we owe staff some sense of what, it's frustrating to walk away not knowing what we want. So I think we should spend some time maybe talking to you, Alex, about what would make us understand this a lot better. And it's no fault of Patrick, it's just sort of, this is what Indian Trail does. I'd like to know why.
What brought it?
The background
What
of that
brought
one
it
and
to
all
our?
that.
yeah.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? No.
So what I'm hearing is the data point of how many accessory structures would be in violation. Of the 7 that were submitted, I apologize
No, that's okay, that's
for
okay.
that.
I should have
Um,
probably asked yesterday, so you had some more time.
And then anything else that would be helpful for us? I heard a better understanding of kind of how it came up. We can address that. If anything else you'd like us to answer, please shoot it to us.
Mayor Pro Tem Scholl, if you could either defer the public hearing until the next meeting or actually close the public hearing so that we don't have to advertise it again, whichever the council prefers.
And which one?
If you
Would
close
be-
the public hearing, public cannot speak again on this item at the next meeting. If you defer it to the next meeting, the public hearing is still technically open.
We'll close the public hearing now, and the council did vote 3-1 to defer.
Thought it was,
I did
Unanimous.
not vote.
oh, you didn't vote?
I did not vote affirm.
3-1.
Really? Oh, wow.
But it, done with it.
Oh.
But it lost, so moving on. Text Amendment 23.03.02 to require additional zoning for single-family residential uses in mixed-use 1 and 2 zoning districts. Open the public hearing.
And we have 6 minutes.
No, we don't. Go as long as you need. I don't have to stick it.
Okay.
I can go to 8.
This is, small, apologize.
Yeah.
Well, so this is TX 230302, which is we're adding conditional zonings in MU1 and MU2 for single-family residential. So you know the history of the last few months, we discussed some additional control measures in MU1 and MU2 for residential. And this text amendment is bringing those control measures and adding conditional zonings for single-family residential. In only the mixed-use 1 and mixed-use 2 zoning category, which essentially makes every single zoning category, when you want to do a rezoning, residential, you would have to go through a conditional zoning. Do you have any questions?
No.
Okay.
No.
All right, well then,
Council?
But I do have a question. Well,
Yeah.
Do you, as a planning director, see any downside to this?
so I don't see a downside in this for mixed use, because then I can work with the developer, whoever applies, and incorporate mixed or multiple uses in those categories. So no.
Okay,
In other words, he's gonna have a whole lot more work.
yeah.
So,
All right, council?
Because I think this is important to avoid getting around our, what we want for single-family residents, I'm going to move that we approve text amendment 23.03.02.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 And statement of consistency and reasonableness. How much of that do I need to read?
All of it.
Grant, would you mind doing the reading?
Sure. So
Just the.
I do want to clarify, I don't think, I mean, you're certainly welcome to, but I think you can just vote to approve.
I think we'll just, the statement of consistency and reasonableness for 23.03.02 to amend Article 8, Table 8.1, Table of Uses to require conditional zoning for single-family residential uses in the mixed-use 1 and mixed-use 2 zoning categories. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Motion, sorry.
I'll move, approve that.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye, I'm sorry. That's it.
All right. All right.
All right.
Stormwater budget reappropriation, next item.
Evening, council. Hopefully everybody had a good Easter. Want to come and talk to you tonight about general stormwater update and then discuss potential budget reallocation. Talking points for tonight, give you an update where our stormwater program and budget sits since the February 13th meeting. Talk about some next steps and some staff recommendations, and then ultimately request council for approval of that reallocation. Purpose, again, really just want to give you an update for where our stormwater program and budget stands over the past 2 months. And then that'll ultimately play into a request for council to approve an $80,000 reallocation that's currently allocated for Twin Pines Phase 2 and reallocated towards our general stormwater repair and maintenance budget for our high priority projects. So for the past couple months, staff, we've done a couple stormwater projects. This one was in Fairfield Plantation, and we had a sinkhole forming around this yard inlet here, and you can see that this box was masoned in place at the time, wasn't sealed properly, causing the sinkholes. See the puddle of water down there. So what we did, ripped it out, put in prefabricated yard inlet, tied it in, and graded it appropriately. This project was originally quoted at about $10,000, and the scope increased a little bit to implement this new box, and the final invoice was for around $12,000. Next project, this was again in Fairfield Plantation, and we were originally called out for sinkholes forming along this fence line here. It initially started at one, but several started forming down the fence line here. And once we excavated where this original sinkhole was forming, we found that there was severely rusted metal pipe that was causing the issues here. It was deteriorating, the entire bottom was rusted out, ultimately forming those sinkholes. So we This fence was at risk of being totally sunken in, so we initiated an emergency repair to tear out all that old pipe, all that rusted pipe. It was about a 180-foot stretch, and we implemented plastic piping instead. And this one significantly increased in scope once we excavated it. It was originally quoted at about $10,000, ended up being about $50,000 to make this repair. So since February, we've completed those couple projects, but also we've added 6 new projects, high-priority projects, to our list. And just as a reminder, our high-priority projects are safety issues or threats to severe property loss and damage. And so you can see some of these new projects we've gotten. You can see sinkholes forming along the property line here where this pipe is presumably lying. Sinkholes forming behind driveways, sidewalks, and behind catch basins here. And just another reminder, back in March, council approved staff to submit an application to the Golden Leaf Foundation and their flood mitigation program with hopes to be awarded up to $250,000 towards that Twin Pines Phase 2 project. And so these are charts giving you general updates from February to now. I won't dive into too much detail here, but really wanted to highlight the last 2 rows of this right table here, of this budget table here, where back in February, we still had $120,000 allocated for Twin Pines Phase 2, and that was originally allocated in fiscal year 2022, carried into 23 as a part of a couple larger stormwater repair projects. We additionally, at that time, back in February, we had about $103,000 of money towards general maintenance and repairs for high-priority projects. Now, we use $40,000 to apply for that Golden Leaf Foundation flood mitigation program, and given the increase in cost and scope of the couple projects we've done since February, we're at about $40,000 remaining in our general maintenance and repair budget. And so, I want to stop and pause there for any questions. I know kind of threw a lot of information at you there, so I'd be happy to answer any questions at the moment.
No, I'm good. Let me first say, I'm pleased, by the way. Kevin, y'all don't know this, but Kevin has been really a rock star with the folks over at Twin Pines. He's proactive. He asked them to get out in video the last storm that came through. They're very, if they're listening to this, I don't think they would disagree. He's been very, very good. This is in my district, and I support this just to help get other things done while we wait on that grant to be approved. So I'll make a motion unless y'all have questions.
Nope.
I'm gonna move to approve $80,000 reappropriation from Twin Pines Phase 2 toward the current high priority project list.
Question or second?
Oh, I just didn't know. I
That was
didn't see it.
gonna be my recommendation
Okay.
anyway, so took the words right out of my mouth.
And I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Kevin. Steven,
All right, so
grant bullet, can you read the bullet out of the,
Anything to pull
I
out?
actually don't have the agenda up in front of me. So we're gonna make this real easy.
it's right there.
Grant policy amendment.
I'm okay with everything that's in the grant policy, except for one bullet. And I'll wait till, looks like he's gonna bring it up. So I think it's the second bullet here. The second bullet says, the town will not be required to otherwise commit resources or maintain any services after the end of the grant period. I would like to effectively just remove that bullet from this proposal. And the reason why is because this is somewhat nebulous, and with it saying maintain any services, I know this was kind of the police department, but one of the other reasons why we're kind of thinking about this is Parks and Rec. So if we can get, what we don't want this to say is, if we get a play set that's $100,000 and it requires regular maintenance, that we can't use this grant policy for that. And with this written the way it is, that's exactly what it means. And so,
Reading this differently, though.
well, but the idea is if we strike that, I mean, this whole proposal is at the manager's oversight. And so it felt like if we remove that, we're still pretty safe because the manager's not gonna do anything crazy or add additional expense. But that was so, this one here was so somewhat nebulous that I was afraid that it might keep us from being able to submit for grants that are probably,
Oh, I
worthy.
see where you're going now.
yeah.
I got it.
Would just be better to amend it?
Well,
Because I see what you're saying, but I also don't want, I think part of the purpose is that to give the town manager greater discretion
right.
up to an amount, right? And with the understanding we're not gonna incur great costs down the road.
I think the amount though, well,
But I could see with like Privet Park, you know, that's 50,000, just under 50, that's gonna cost a lot of money. Not a lot, but that could be thousands of dollars down the road, right?
oh, absolutely.
So that's why I
So you're, I'm sorry, Matt. So you're giving the manager the authority to apply for grants without council consent that would put us on the hook for future revenue. See, that's what I don't understand.
Yeah, yeah, so,
With no
He would
cap.
still be able to apply for the grant. He just has to come to us and say, hey, this grant is worth, 40,000, but it's gonna potentially require some additional expenditure down the road. I'm not sure I'm understanding.
so,
What's the purpose?
so here's the thing, right now, for those that don't know, when they apply for grants, a lot of these grants come in very sliverous, you got 14 days to apply for it. So they've got to write up the proposal, get in front of us, get the approval before they can submit it, okay? And a lot of times, a lot of these grants have already closed. And so the idea here is that for this dollar amount that we're talking about, taking the council vote out of the equation allows them to apply for more grants over that, because the window, they don't have to get to a council meeting and get an approval for that grant to go forward.
What if it's a $50,000 grant that puts us on the hook for $1 million of expenditure down the road? That's not be likely, but I'm just trying to get the,
Well, I mean, that's
since
where
this
we,
is the staff recommendation, I'm wondering why. It feels like a protection that you're wanting to remove
but,
for the sake of expediency, and I get that argument too.
but I mean, if you say, we kind of worked through some different options, and everything that we came up with seemed to be a little, loose and hard to define. I mean, if you cap it and say, let's say we cap it at $100,000 of additional maintenance, is that over a 5-year period? Is that over a 10-year period? You see,
And why wouldn't it just come back to council to yay or nay on it?
well, that's what this, if that's the case, then we're kind of overshooting the whole reason for this change in this proposal, if they're coming to council to begin with. So you're saying if it's over a certain amount of potential maintenance, you want it to come back to council?
Well, I don't want to be on the hook from a grant for something we weren't budgeting for. I want to know about it. And also, I'm surprised and shocked that a grant application period is only 2 weeks, 3 weeks max.
Yeah,
That can't be right.
no, that is right.
So, may I just, this is to get us to expedite applying for grants, right? Could we have something in there about then coming to town council for use of that grant? Like, is there, if we get the grant, we have to use it? Is that the deal?
It probably depends on the grant, honestly. Some grants will say, by applying, you're agreeing if you get it to the terms of the grant. Sometimes grants will say, you only need to kind of fully accept the agreement of the grant once The grant is awarded and there's like a contract basically. So it really depends on the grant.
And we can withdraw our application, right? At any time?
I see no reason why not.
So would it just be better to say if the town would be required to commit resources, maintain, then come back to, go to the town council? Like, I have no problem with you applying, but, and in the interim, we could always have a meeting and vote on it and say, are we actually in favor of this?
So you're saying, go ahead and submit, and then we could withdraw if,
Yeah.
Like that's a lot of staff work ahead. I mean, grants are work, I would assume. I'm not supporting that because I think it's just a protection for our town manager not to put him on the hook for making a bad decision. So I think it's in Alex's or the town manager's best interest to expand the policy to 50,000 without approval. I'm just not comfortable taking this out because it potentially puts us on the hook for, and we just talked about how tight the budget's going to be for the next 5 years.
so what would be your, I mean, kind of,
I would approve that as written because that's the staff recommendation.
but that puts them on the hook. I mean, if we get anything that requires just general maintenance, that takes this out of the,
This is an expansion of our existing policy. That's why it's here, I think. Isn't that what we're talking about? Staff is looking for a way to do it better. Unless I'm missing something, this should be an expansion of Alex's capacity and help the process. But it also has the back-end protection about if it requires council, we can still approve these grants, Steve, that's what I'm saying. It just has to come here before we commit future revenue to support the use of the grant in the short term. So I'm happy to defer and get Heather and Taylor and the mayor and let them hear it as well. I'm not sure I'm with you on that tonight.
okay. I mean, I'm just looking for a way to be able to get us to the doorstep and get these grants. Whereas right now, the way that we do this, we're missing grants because we can't get through them.
I've never heard that before.
You know,
Maybe you have. But
Yes.
Okay, well, no one's,
Yeah.
that's not been a problem identified that I've heard of, that we can't get grants because the window is so short. We have council meetings every 2 weeks.
can add a little bit of context
I'm
to
gonna have
it,
to be
so.
excused, by the way, in a second.
Our grant policy is, I'll use the word a bit draconian. And it probably weighs very heavily oversight versus incentivizing applying for grants. So there's probably a better balance of incentivizing staff to apply for good grants, which we want, but providing the proper oversight so that staff doesn't commit to the town to something like the example you used where it's a $50,000 grant, right? But it's $1 million down the line, right? So this was an effort to kind of balance those interests, but also to incentivize staff to kind of go after grants, especially with kind of finances being out there.
So I'm going to make a motion that we table the grant policy amendment to kind of, I think there's probably somewhere in the middle. Like, I don't want you to come if it's just general maintenance type items, but at the same token, I think probably isn't good to remove this altogether, so.
Second. All in favor?
Aye. Motion to adjourn.
Aye.
No.
Second.
Sorry, I got to run, but thank y'all for being quick tonight.
Bye, Brad.
Mr. Richardson, thanks you.
Mr. Richardson.